guest speaker, we're going to have Alyssa Lovegrove, who is a professor of entrepreneurship at Georgetown and is also the associate director of Georgetown's Entrepreneurship Initiative. Her career spans the banking, management consulting, consumer retail, and nonprofit sectors in the US and the UK. Before joining the faculty at Georgetown, she was the co-founder and CEO of the Great Little Trading Company, a UK-based e-commerce retailer. So, Alyssa, I'll go ahead and transition to you.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. Well, hello, everyone. I'll just share with you what my experience has been using the platform. I actually used it for the first time a year ago when it was still in the beta phase. And so I've had an opportunity now to use it twice and to see how far the platform's come, how much it's developed. I guess I'll begin by just explaining the context in which we used it. As you can see on the screen, my class is the Entrepreneurship Practicum. It's a management class, and we sometimes nickname it Life After Launch. It focuses on that period after you've decided to go all in, and we look at a whole range of different companies. And the point of it is to look at the strategic, the operational, and even the personal challenges that entrepreneurs face. So what will happen, the first part of the class, we use the real-time cases. Actually, in the second part of the class, each of my students is interning with a local early-stage company. And that is to give them an inside view of a company as well. And what they do for the class is they present a case study, not unlike what the real-time cases are, they present a case study to their peers about the company that they've been in. So by the end of the term, my students will have seen probably 20 or 25 different environments, and they can pull out of that the common themes. They can get a really good feel for what startup life is like. And my goal is for them to develop some essentially transferable management skills, things that they can apply to a future role. A lot of our students, these are seniors in our undergraduate entrepreneurship fellows program, and a lot of these students are planning to join startups after graduation or at some point in the future. They may or may not be launching their own companies, but they definitely want to be in the startup environment. They want to understand how startups are different from other companies. And of course, a lot of the rest of the curriculum looks a lot at more established businesses, and we feel it's quite important for people to understand, or for students to understand, the differences between an early stage company and a more mature business. So that's my goal, is for them to develop these transferable skills, and a big part of that is the critical thinking, the problem solving. I mean, as we all know, the real world is very different from the classroom, and there's not always a right answer, and even if there were, it's not obvious what that is. So students really need to learn not so much what's the right answer, but rather what's the right process. So, as you can see from my bio as well, I'm not a lifelong academic. I spent most of my career actually in or running companies. So, I have a natural bias towards real-world skills, and I guess I've seen firsthand that the classroom environment, the conventional classroom environment, doesn't always prepare graduates for that setting. So that's what I'm trying to achieve. I guess in terms of the benefits, I'll just go quickly through what we discovered using it in class. There are a whole range of benefits that we've encountered using the platform. I think first and foremost, as it says on the slide, there's no wrong answer. In other words, we're not looking at a historical perspective. There's no way of going back and looking at what the company did do and how that worked out. And I think as a consequence of that, the students are simply more willing to engage in conversation. It's not a big part of what I do is try to get them out of their comfort zone. I grade class participation very heavily, and that's again because I think that's what you have to do in a real job. It's about whether you can voice your opinions and defend them and work with other people on the team. So I find that students are really much more willing to engage in the conversation. They just feel there's less risk to putting out their own ideas. So that's a big piece of it. I think another piece of it is that it does really force them to apply skills. In a lot of other courses, they are being asked to tell us what they learned and to reflect on it. But this is one of the few places where we turn around and say, okay, what are you going to do with this information? How will you apply it? And I'm expecting them to pull out into these conversations things they may have learned even in other classes, but to apply them in a different way. So I find it very useful. It's a good way to get them into that mode of applying skills. I think it certainly forces them to be more action-oriented. This is about a plan of action. It's not about whether my answer is better than yours or anything like that. It's really about, what are we going to do to take the company forward? What are we going to experiment with? How will we know if we're on the right track? So it's I guess, again, a little bit less academic and more applied. This is my opinion. I definitely feel it's a great way of preparing for the real world. I find it's a little bit of a shock. I know it was for me when I graduated from college. It's a bit of a shock to go out into the real world and discover that, you get very limited guidance. There isn't a known answer. There's no rubric. A lot of it is, your employer, your supervisor expecting you to figure it out. And so, getting them in that mindset of, it's the answer isn't necessarily something obvious or something you can look up, and you can't just go and ask somebody for help. You have to have a go and then ask them for guidance on what you've done. So I try and stimulate that in the classroom as well. And I think, finally, the thing that is perhaps most compelling, I guess some of what I've just said you could say about all cases, including off-the-shelf cases, but of course what's really different here is that the cases evolve. It's easy to update them and keep them current, which means that we can follow the journey that these companies are taking. We can look at new developments. So, for example, this year I looked back at some of the same companies we did in the first year, but things had changed, and it was fun for me to see how what had developed within these companies and how how that might change the nature of the problem that they're solving now. And candidly, I launched my first company 20 years ago, and so a great deal has changed. This helps me stay current. Keeps me, I think, a little bit more in tune with what is really happening off campus and in the real world. So in a nutshell, those are the things I find really powerful about the platform. As Jennifer mentioned, we did do a survey of my students. I didn't participate in that survey. I let them do it in a hands-off way. But I think the feedback really was very positive and very genuine. It was a very different approach than what my students had experienced in other classroom environments. I guess, Jennifer, does that make sense to you?
Absolutely.
Is there anything more I can add? Yeah.
Well, we can add that if we offer pizza, right? That's how students get engaged.
Yeah.
Yes. We were very happy to work with your students because they gave us such great insights on how to improve not only the platform, but the experience. And it's been very meaningful for us to continue that relationship. All right. Thank you so much, Alyssa. I appreciate it. And please, if everyone in the text chat, if you can find that happy face button, there's a applause. And if you do have questions for Alyssa, please go ahead and put them in the text chat. And Alyssa, thank you so much for joining us.